Aaron, this is a 5th grade project that I have done a couple times with the kids and had great success with it. We first look at a variety of Aboriginal art. Most of it is contemporary, though some of it still has a lot of the tracings and trappings of the art that was originally in Australia, made by the Aboriginal peoples. One of the first things I talk about is the use of animals, or actually the kids, notice that, and in particular, the use of stylized animals. So we talk about how stylization is artists looking at real life and nature and then making things their own. So simplifying, changing things a little bit, and about how that's an important thing, an important part of the artwork. And it kind of gives them an opportunity to just kind of relax and also be a little bit creative with the animal silhouettes that they create. Another thing we talk about is that twins in Aboriginal art are supposed to hold magical powers, so they're open to doing that too if they would like to have twins in their artwork. They also notice a lot of the patterns, and that the patterns are both linear and dot patterns. So that's an important thing to remember because we use both in this art project. Sometimes the kids are like, oh, this animal shouldn't be this kind of color. And we talk about how they can choose colors that are non-naturalistic or naturalistic. It's really up to them. Up to them. A lot of the artwork is pretty flat, and so we talk about why that is, but also we talk about how there's overlapping, how there's a little bit of dimension, and about how there's always animals in the picture plane and also pattern and some kind of environmental clue as to what the animal is. So these are supposed to be crocodiles, though the kids go crazy because they're like, this is definitely not a crocodile tail, Mrs. Swan. But it's stylized and it's all good. But but what I say is, well, it's important to kind of give people clues then, that they're hanging out in the water, so there's seaweed. So we have, we spend a good 20 minutes, half an hour just talking about this artwork and looking at it. Another thing that we talk about is the tradition of using the dot pattern in the background, which they can definitely use in their own art. And then we talk about why it is that they use the X-ray style of painting. And the reason was in the beginning that they wanted to have a better hunt. So they felt like the more they knew about the animal and the more they could record, the better the hunt would be. Though a lot of contemporary Aboriginal artists are thinking more about how they can know the animals and know them inside and out, and that's almost like a form of protection because so many animals are mistreated in Australia and also endangered. So that's part of it's kind of a new spin on animals, and the kids really love that because so many of them are so invested in animals already. We talk also about how there can be different symbols in the artwork, and this one has a lot to do with a ceremony that has to do with coming of age, and the different things that you see here have to do with the different parts of the ceremony, so they like that too. We talk about how the animal takes up the majority of the picture plane. That's really important, that it can't be tiny, so the stingray almost takes up the entire thing. And then also just more information about Aboriginal art and Aboriginal culture here and there. So if you come in the middle of this project, it should be up on the non-usable whiteboard where the table jobs are, and you can refer to these, and the kids oftentimes come back and they take a closer look, and so that's always nice for them to do. So usually on the same day that we start, I get them going by talking about making a silhouette. So I go up on the board and I draw a silhouette for them. And we talk about how a silhouette is an outline. And they probably would start sketching on a piece of paper like this. Different animal silhouettes that they could use. And sometimes what I'll do is I will just draw the shapes of an animal. And oftentimes I use my fish Triton because they just enjoy that part. And I say, if it helps, you can just draw all the parts of the animal, even the parts that are in the inside. And then you can just cut it out. And I show them how to cut it out and then flip it over, and then it's just the outside part. Or I might do this on the whiteboard and I'll say, anything that's on the inside, you're not going to need to see because it's a silhouette. And so I just erase and then show them. When they're done drawing out their different silhouettes, we talk about which one might be the best for this project. You know, which ones are most identifiable as silhouettes. And then they pick one and then they get started on the construction paper part. So I lay out many half sheets of different colors of construction paper. This is just stuff that I grabbed. They need 2 of these, and it can be naturalistic or non-naturalistic, totally up to them. And then they need 1 full sheet of paper, which is going to serve as their background. And usually I do a black and a brown and then a blue, because a lot of kids decide they want to do things in water, and also the sky. So yeah. Then the next thing that I show them is that what we're doing is taking up the entire paper for this silhouette. And if they use half the paper for their silhouette, then it really has to be because they're doing twins. If they don't use the whole paper, then I usually have them go back and try it again. So I demonstrate, you know, how to make the whole paper and break down animals into shapes, especially their bodies. And usually I make it way too big on purpose, and they're like, that's too big! Which is always good because a lot of them make things really small, because it takes confidence to draw things really large. So I might make a silhouette of Triton. And again, I say, you know, things in the inside you're not going to see right now. You can always add those details later. And then I talk about cutting it out. So, something that they get really confused about is that you don't want to see your pencil lines. So I always remind them that they need to put the glue on the part that has the pencil. Because that part's, you know, unfinished. It shows your work in the beginning, but you don't want to see it later on. Because we're going to be painting on top of them, and we just don't need to see that part. And I have them save all these scraps in the recycle bin, because oftentimes when it comes to the next portion, they get really intimidated about making the environmental shapes. And sometimes it just takes, you know, looking for some cool scrap in the recycle bin, and they feel a whole lot better about it. So we don't throw anything away, we save it all. And then of course, because I have a fish, I talk about, you know, my environmental shapes are going to be something that would show a clue that this fish is in, that this animal is a fish. So what I might do is, you know, demonstrate making seaweed, or making bubbles, or making rocks or sand or whatever, something that could be, you know, in the sea, in the ocean, that would let them know that. And sometimes I rip, sometimes I cut, and they can do whatever they want, which is kind of fun. Sometimes I say, you know, if you really have a good idea and you just want to go for it, why don't you try drawing like Henri Matisse did when he was an elderly gentleman, which means you just draw with your scissors and just go for it. And a lot of them really like that because they just want to jump right in. So I might do something like that. And what I always show them is like what you have left. It might be really cool. So pay attention to the scraps you have, because maybe that will be an awesome environmental shape for you to use as well. And I say you can use as many environmental shapes as you want. You know, they don't have to be as big as your animal silhouette, because that's going to be the focal point. And I tell them, you know, once you have your background, then you can start thinking about where you want things to go. And we usually start this part like on the second day, the gluing. And then we talk a little bit about how the Aboriginal art that we saw before had overlapping, and you know, it was pretty flat, but it had some dimension because it had the overlapping. And so I say, you know, lay it out first, think about where things go, think about where you would like things to go. You know, how do you want your animal to be positioned? Do you want them to be hiding? Do you want them to be out front and center? The next thing that I show them is how to glue. And I've tried this project with regular glue, and it's not very pretty. So instead, I put out a bunch of big white copy paper, and I tell them, you know, remind them, you've got to put your glue on the back. It's really important where the pencil is. But I show them how you can apply the glue while it's on the white paper, and then it's not going to make a mess later on. I usually have them get 2 white papers, one for gluing and then one for pressing down. And then to think about where they wanted it to go before. And I say, you know what, this usually doesn't work very well if you just use your hands. So if you have a piece of white paper, or even you could use that piece of gluey paper folded in half. Then you can just smooth on the top. And then if you have to go back and apply a little bit of glue in something that did not stick, that would be totally fine. I say this doesn't usually work, because sometimes then you get marks on your construction paper, or you might get paper cut even, which is not fun. And then we do that with these as well and glue them down. So that's usually like the second day-ish. And if they have extra time, I start talking to them about line details, and they can take their pencil and start thinking about a place here and there where they want some line details. We look again at the examples of the Aboriginal art, and we talk about how you could start thinking about how you want something to be X-ray style, or maybe you just want to add a little bit of detail by doing some sort of an outline. Maybe you want pattern going on there. It is totally up to them. But what I start stressing to them is that you don't want to add too much, because we're going to be adding the dots as well as the lines. So I say a little here, a little there, but not everywhere. So then on the third day, switch gears a little bit. I'm going to take their artwork, and then wherever they had their line details, we talk about painting those. And what I do for the paint for this project is I just use tempera, and I set it up on a tray like this. And I put some clean water in a cup. The clean water cups and brushes are to the right of the sink that is on the sink that's closest to your desk, but not on the side where the door is. So if you look at the stuff that says self-sandwich, cabinet, and mandala artwork, it's to the right of that. There's usually tempera paint under there, and then to the right of that is the brushes and the water containers. And I'll try and label those, but if I forget. stop.